Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders wants America to be a socialist country, and even liberals are blasting his agenda. My next guest says socialism is a violation of basic human rights. Thor Halvorson of the Human Rights Foundation joins me now with details. Thor, why do you believe socialism is a violation of basic human rights?
Well, let's actually qualify that. Countries that do not violate human rights can have socialist governments, and that's perfectly okay. If there are branches of government that exist and separation of powers and constitutional rights, you can have a country like Denmark or Norway or Sweden that oftentimes have socialist governments, labor governments. That's perfectly fine. The problem is when socialism is done under an authoritarian government or someone using socialism as a mask, takes control of a government, claims that they're going to help the people, and ultimately end up looting the country and ruining it.
Let's drive it back, though, to the definition of socialism, because it's my belief that the people who are all for Bernie Sanders have no idea what socialism is as a government, as a recipe for how government works. Explain it.
Well, that depends. I mean, people can take a historic definition of socialism, an academic definition of socialism, or they can take a definition because arguably many countries, many democratic countries have socialist policies. Now, there's a difference between having a socialist policy, having a socialist government, being a socialist. Some people academically believe that socialism, communism, Marxism are the same thing. And that's one way of looking at it.
To get away from getting too bogged down by the details here, what is your major objection to the way socialism is practiced in some countries? Is it the looting of personal property?
Well, of course. Of course. You take a country like Venezuela. The government decides that prices are going to be a certain way because they want prices to be. And then because they set prices, what ends up happening is massive shortages. And what you have now coming up is a humanitarian crisis. But I will say this. I actually made the largest contribution allowable to the campaign of Bernie Sanders. I made a contribution to Bernie Sanders' campaign. Yes. I believe because the Democratic frontrunner right now is unfortunately someone who has taken millions and millions of dollars from many dictatorships. Algeria, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, Saudi Arabia, countries that execute people for being gay, countries that restrict all press freedoms, countries that in some cases ban Christmas. I would much rather have Bernie Sanders be the Democratic frontrunner than a person who takes money from dictatorships, unquestionably. And at the same time, on the Republican side, you have the frontrunner who believes that Putin is fine. And that is awful as well.
You say that's a problem as well.
In both
I just have to get you to one more thing before you go, because you have personal experience with this in Venezuela. Your father
was a political prisoner.
Tell me about that.
My father was a political prisoner. My mother was shot by the regime of Hugo Chavez. And my cousin, my first cousin, is currently in prison in Venezuela.
So you know what you're talking about. This comes from experience.
Yes.
This isn't something that you read in a history book.
Yes, but you see, Venezuela had for years, for decades, labor governments that nodded to democratic socialism. Democratic socialism can exist if there's rule of law. The problem becomes when that's wiped away and the executive decides to take control of everything. Personally, my view is that redistribution of wealth is not the way to end poverty. You end poverty not by redistributing wealth. You end it by creating more wealth. As such, I'm a believer in free markets. But at the same time, dictatorships are a much bigger problem. I'd rather have a democratic socialist than a supporter of dictators in the White House.
Oh my God, that was embarrassing. That was embarrassing. And I just want to note the irony here. The name of that show is called The Intelligence Report. Come on. The Intelligence Report? You better learn what socialism is if you're going to claim to be intelligent. Now she says, oh, but the people for Bernie, they don't even know what socialism is. No, in actuality, it's the opposite. We support Bernie because we know what socialism is. Bernie Sanders is a social democrat. In international standards, he's actually a centrist. Like, I actually have a friend who supports communism, Euro-communism from Serbia, and he said that, why are people calling Bernie Sanders a communist or a socialist? He's basically a centrist. I don't understand what Americans are talking about. So if you know what socialism is, you're going to be more inclined to support Bernie Sanders because it works. This isn't like National Socialism. This isn't like Venezuela. This is like democratic socialism like you see in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland. These are areas doing really, really well. Now here's the thing about socialism. Americans love it. Social Security? That's a socialist program, and it is one of the most highest approved social programs in the country. So if Americans really know what socialism is and what would constitute a socialist program, Guess what? They absolutely love it and adore it. So this fear-mongering tactic did not go very well for them. Now, I love how when he started to explain it more, she's like, well, okay, stop. I don't want to get bogged down by the details. Come on. Can you please tell me something bad about socialism or Bernie Sanders, maybe? And then he just dropped a bomb on her. I donated the maximum contribution of $2,700 to his campaign. I wish that they would have panned to her face so you can see the reaction as she was like, what? Why? Why would you do this? Well, it's because you don't know what socialism is. You get scared by these boogeyman words, even though this is called the Intelligence Report. You're not so intelligent if you don't know what socialism is. And let me just say, this dude's name is Thor. Okay, this guy deserves a round of applause. I mean, awesome person. Thank you so much for going on Fox News and blowing it up, because this just went horribly wrong for them. They were expecting to have this great fear-mongering propaganda piece, and man, you did not allow that to happen. So kudos to Thor, an awesome name, by the way. This is brilliant. This is gold right here.